Hello and welcome to the Content Advantage, a talk show about content for content professionals. I'm Scott Abel, and joining me today is my co-host, Megan Gahuli. Hi, Megan.
Hey, Scott, how are you doing?
Great. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you as well. So let me introduce our amazing guest today. Today we have with us the Director of Technical Communications at Poly, who also happens to share my love for home remodels. So we have a lot in common. This is Deborah Vatani. Deborah, welcome.
Hello.
So we all have fires kind of burning near us. I'm in Colorado. You guys are in California, but Deb, it sounds like you have some fires fairly close that might take your internet down. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that we don't have any issues.
Right.
Excellent.
Thanks for mentioning that. And we're going to just pray to the internet gods that we stay up.
Double fingers and double toes crossed over here, and we're going to be fine. But just to let our audience members know, especially if you're new to the Bright Talk experience, here's a few things that you need to know. Today's show is being recorded, so if you need to leave a little early, don't worry. You can come back later and watch a recording. We'll send you an email shortly after the show's over, letting you know how you can access that program. And actually, if you just copy the same URL that you're using to watch today's live show, it'll work and direct you right to the recording about a half an hour or so after we end the broadcast today. Second, we can't see or hear you, so you don't have to worry about us having access to your camera or microphone. And third, you can ask a question at any time by clicking the Ask a Question tab located underneath your webinar viewing panel. Doing that will open a little text-based window, and you can type your text in there and send it to us. We won't be able to text you back, but know that we will receive them and process as many as we can with the time that we have available on today's show. And last, there's some additional content located in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel. Clicking that button will take you to some handouts provided by our sponsor, Zoomin software, and also allow you to access troubleshooting information and information about how you can contact the guests on today's show. All right, so without further ado, let's move this show forward.
Excellent. So before we get to the subject of today's show, we want to hear a little bit about you, Deborah. So can you tell us about your career path and your connection to today's topic, which of course is selling the value of technical communication transformation to upper management?
Sure, absolutely. So I have been in the telecom industry since the early 80s, actually. I started with a little company that was creating networks back in the early 80s. And that little company, Bridge Communications, became 3Com Corporation. And since then, this industry can't get rid of me. I spent a lot of years in multiple roles. Most notably at Cisco. I spent close to 20 years at Cisco and was a documentation manager there. Have been in the content game for a really, really long time, going back to, desktop publishing, when we could, how things worked, and the introduction of FrameMaker, and much later, of course, SGML, and then XML, and so been around for a long time and still enjoy it very much. I enjoy creating information. I really enjoy managing teams, and I really enjoy bringing change to organizations, which is really what we're about today.
Exactly. In fact, today's topic of today's show deals specifically with how you can sell the value to management of content transformation efforts inside of technical communication departments, which I think you're a perfect person to talk about. So before we dive into that topic, could you tell us what do you mean when you hear the word, or when you use it, transformation? What are we talking about in the technical communication realm?
Well, for me, transformation is a much broader thing than, say, buying a tool or implementing a new process or engaging with a different group. Transformation really involves a lot of partners within your organization. Maybe that's your support teams, marketing, the sales group. It could be, any or all of the cross-functional groups that you interact with. And from my experience, technical communicators interact with pretty much everybody, even compliance and manufacturing. So transformational change for me is how we really improve the outcome for the customer. That's the number one thing, is to really focus on customer, customer, customer. And then how do we, improve everything for everybody that is also delivering value to the customer from your company? And how do you do that together in a unified fashion? So transformation is much bigger than an event. It's typically a journey, and it typically takes a really long time and lots of influence skills.
Yeah, and if you look that word up in the dictionary too, you also get that kind of imagining of what it's like to change from a caterpillar into a butterfly, right? It's a significant change. I think that adaptation is what we're looking for. But yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I love that.
It's really about, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's about vision. It's about like being able to articulate where you want to be somewhere down the road, and then working backwards to kind of figure out how you're going to get there, and to get all the people and places and money and budgets and things all aligned to help transform truly to a new reality that you envisioned long ago.
Very nice. So it reminds me of one of the leadership principles that we had at Amazon, which was think big, right? We wanted to think at a very large level. Everyone had to be able to think about the big picture, not just think about their tool or their process, but to think about how their tool and their process fit into a bigger transformation. I also think of transformation as being a bit more of a one-way door. You're not going to transform and then come back to where you are today, right? You might get a tool and then get rid of the tool, but you're not going to transform your entire organization and then come back. So when you think about this, does this mean that we need to sort of switch from a departmental focus to an enterprise focus? And how do we kind of do that as a TechCom team?
Yeah, it's absolutely switching to an enterprise focus. And I think the first thing that you have to do is, understand your ecosystem, right? You need to, if you're kind of siloed, then get out of that silo. The other thing is to really think big and to think about all those things that you do that touch others. So that shift to an enterprise focus, really, you got to know what you're after. I guess, at the very basis of it, you need to go after something. One of those things, and I have a slide on that. Hopefully, can you see the slide? I think so.
Yeah, looks great.
Yeah. Okay. So this notion of know what you're after. I mean, I spend a lot of time with a lot of people talking about, oh, we need to do this and we need to do that. But it's hard to crystallize really big thinking. So write it down and start shifting not only your focus, but those around you, around those things that touch other people. So some of the examples could be applied language and language governance, right? I don't name my products. The naming conventions come out of our marketing teams, but sometimes they're not quite clear on some of the issues because we're tech doc people. We know words. We need to enlighten them about even localization issues and things like that. How are you going to share content, not just within your own organization, within technical communication groups? We spend a lot of time about reuse among our own team members and sharing content. And we think about metadata for our own stuff, but we don't think about applying it across the organization. Same thing with authoring and review. Can we share the collaborative function of authoring? Can we get other people on our systems to actually author for us? Can we get them to review in a different way? So, there's a lot of things. Also, localization. Why would marketing have their own localization policy and I have mine and sales has theirs? Because once you bring some of these things all together, then you can get into the, semantic AI, machine learning, a lot of other things that technology now is allowing us to do.
That's a lot. And I mean, I think we could do a whole book, right, on this transformation.
Yeah.
So, but we can't do that in 30 minutes. So here, let me ask a better question. At a basic level, what are the required elements, the must-haves that we have to have in order to communicate with executives about transformational change in your view? What short list do you have that you just really have to have?
I think that, and for me and for Polly, it was a matter of selling this notion that all content is an asset for the organization, not just our content that my group produces, but everybody else's content. And we had a unique situation as an example, in this sort of a anecdotal story. You may be aware that Poly used to be Polycom and Plantronics, and they merged a couple of years ago. Well, finding that Poly voice and finding that, linguistic presence for the new company, turns out that's challenging. And I imagine a lot of people on this call have gone through mergers and acquisitions, and they face similar things. So one of the unifying factors of that is content is an asset. So sort of shifting everybody's thinking to, wait a minute, it's about all content, not just ours. And that if we can unify it, strategically unify that we can semantically enable, we can do all these things that, again, benefit the customer, because that's really what it's all about. How do we make sure our support information and our tech doc information and our marketing information, that they all say the same thing about the features that are supported on a product, right? So a lot of it has to do with just that content as an asset thinking.
That's awesome. I kind of feel like you're giving my sermon right now, because I constantly am talking to customers about how it's not about, if you're a support team, it's not about your content versus the tech doc content versus the training content. It's about all of the content and the doors your customers are coming through to get to that content. And it's those doors that need to have all of the content wherever they are. So I love your customer focus. I love how you're really kind of bringing everyone together. So more specifically, are there tactics that we can use to kind of build this buzz? So you're talking about selling the idea that all content is an asset. What are the tactics you use to get that throughout the enterprise and kind of build that buzz around your group or your initiative?
Yeah. So the first thing is executive communication. And, I am lucky in that I have VPs and GMs that actually came to me at Poly and said, hey, if you were going to transform the company, what would you do? Many times that's not the case. And many times you're seen as a cost center, particularly technical communication groups, which again is why if you tie yourself to being an asset and that all content is an asset, suddenly that has some power behind it. So go sell that to an executive sponsor. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's somebody else. I'm a full believer in creating a buzz. Anyone that's worked with me knows I talk too much, but in doing so, it's sometimes a good thing. In doing that, I can, really start sharing these concepts and, get them interested and get them, curious about even the tools we use or where we can help them, sharing an Acrolinks terms database or things like that. And then, in my case, and I believe in this very strongly, we did this at Cisco, and you have to be allowed to do it. Sometimes organizations are a little weird about it, but go big or go home, right? True transformational change. Don't pitch one leg of the stool. Go for all three. Go for the full Monty on this stuff. Figure out, again, your vision and work back. And then don't be afraid to share that dream. Certainly have a roadmap. Don't just talk about it. Write it down. And then, push the benefits. If they're not getting it, just keep talking about it. Figure out how much it's going to cost. And then practice that math. Right? Because honestly, I have executives that'll call me and say, okay, so Deb, in Q3 of next year, what was the number you were going to put on our ROI for the marketing team on, sharing language? You have to know that math cold. So do the math, know it, and then know your audience. So when you go to pitch it for real in front of the people that will decide your fate, make sure that you know your audience. If they don't want to hear about the challenges, or if they are all about challenges, make sure you've got that in your slides. Go solicit people so you hit the mark properly. And then eye candy presentations are always good for the executive. They don't want to have all the detail. Do not go in deep detail about metadata will enable and the If you do that, you'll lose your audience. Right? You will lose them.
Don't talk to them about reuse, because they'll be like, what are you talking about?
Like,
of course you got to reuse stuff, right?
Yeah. Anything you ever talk about, they don't care about.
Right.
No, you talk about improving the customer experience. You talk about the bottom line, the ROI for the customer, for the company, all that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, I want to drill into your number 3 one, the go big or go home. I have a sort of a random question for you, but so go big or go home, you said, that's the best way to kind of go to folks and sell the big transformation. But we all know that there are people who are very risk adverse, and go big or go home means everyone has to take risk, right?
Yeah.
So how do you sort of coach the people that have really risk adverse managers that they're trying to sell this big transformation to? What do you tell that person?
Well, first of all, you look for the benefit for their organization, because again, transformational change is not all about you, right? And that has to be one of your guiding principles. So you want to help them figure out where participating and sharing and selling this idea, creating that buzz, is going to benefit their team, so that they can share that. And to really get out of your own comfort zone and learn more about another organization. And honestly, sometimes other organizations aren't ready. We have a situation where we're in the midst of doing a full relaunch of our support site, and they're very excited about my initiative, but they can't really contribute right now. We do have a metadata framework that we've shared with them, and handing that off to them, they were like, oh my God, this is great. Can we just use this? It's like, sure, please do. Right. It benefits me, and it benefits my Zoomin portal. It benefits a lot of things. Ultimately, it benefits the customer, but they can't play with me in the same sandbox right now. So that journey of 3 years or 5, depending on what you're doing, laying that out into what am I going to do and when, and where do we bring people on, has a lot to do with that engagement, feeling better for other people.
Yeah, speaking of engagement, this seems like a great time for you, Megan, to tell our audience a little bit about the sponsor of today's show, Zoomin Software.
Yes, absolutely. So Zoomin is a platform that ingests technical product content from any source. And it can be created in XML, it can be created in FrameMaker, all of those different places that Deborah's been talking about. No matter how it was created or published, we deliver it into a documentation portal, into your community, into your customer service site, and even into your product itself. And so this is one of those tools that Deborah's team has actually used to help sort of elevate and bring that cross-functional transformation to her team. So it's Deborah's been using it, and she can kind of speak to that as well.
Yes, we are very, very happy Zoomin clients. We do use that Zoomin portal as a documentation library for all of our HTML content that my team produces. And we are in talks with our broader organization about leveraging that for the rest of the company. We also generate online help systems and integrated HTML help for a number of products in the cloud, and it just works flawlessly. And then of course the analytics are hugely important to us, and we're just now getting into really deeper analytics, and we got a head count put on this now. So it's very exciting to be able to see where our metadata application is going to be transforming the learning that we have about our own content in terms of the Zoomin analytics that are provided. So yeah, great partnership there. Highly recommend. Yep.
Excellent. Deb, can you share with our audience members maybe an example or a story that might illustrate one of your attempts to sell a transformation to your leadership? Do you have some kind of anecdote or story that you could share?
Well, yeah. Like I said, in this case, I was asked. I had been at Poly about, I don't know, a year and a half, and we got all new leadership. As is with lots of mergers and acquisitions, we get new leaders in. So we got this fabulous leader who is our now general manager, really, really smart, intelligent person who has worked in content areas for Netflix and others. So she understands things like metadata and whatnot. But anyway, she came to me and she said, okay, I need you to do a deep dive on your organization. I'm your new leader. I need to understand. Can you and your VP get some slides to me? Sure. Well, a week goes by and I'd already done the slides. But anyway, comes back. No, we don't want to know that. Yeah, that's stale. We know what you do. What we'd really like to know is, like, can you go bold? If you could change something, what would that be? And that became a presentation that I did all these things that I'm talking about today. I mean, I put a vision forth and I put it into slides and I put numbers to it. And it involved all kinds of other organizations that I hadn't even talked to really at that point. And I got online with the GM and I just went big. You know, that's the go home thing. I'm like, I don't know if this is a job interview. Hope not. Hope it goes well. And so that became a working plan, not only for my organization, it's now what we call an OKR, an objective with key results assigned to it that I report out on, as do other sister organizations and cross-functional teams that are involved. So this got picked up, even discussed at the board of directors, which I was completely floored by. Only one slide, but nonetheless. That a technical communication transformation could hit big time like that really shows that we can transform. We don't have to be marketing or sales or sexy product development. Right. We can do it, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. I mean, so she actually used the word "go bold." She basically was saying, "Deb, go big or go home," right? She did. She handed that to you. So that's amazing. So how would you get support, or what kind of plan would you put together if you didn't have that executive that's coming in and saying, "Hey, TechCom leader, go big or go home"? They're kind of saying, "Okay, tell us what you got," and we don't know whether we can go big or go home. What kind of things do you plan for in that scenario?
Well, first of all, I would think it through very, very closely and carefully, and share it with my staff, share it with all the people around me. And then I would definitely, put together a 3-year journey. This is just an example slide. And it's one that was similar to what we actually did. But, I tried to break it down into, year over year. We've got some tools development. And then there are other slides, obviously, that talk about what does the organization get? Where's the ROI on that? And that also is where some numbers come in. And then, okay, we're going to do some more things in the second year. We're going to, start getting to optimize content, it's a crumb trail, right? You really want to lead a crumb trail. And then you get down to what's the Big Bang Theory? I get end-to-end content experience for our customers, right? I have a content operations model that, I can realize. So it's building the big enough picture and then breaking it down in sexy slides that executives can, this sounds like they know what they're talking about, because they don't really want to know it any detail. You just want the money basically to be able to do this, right? So
right. So is this what you did? You started with tools and then went to processes and then content optimization?
Yes, in a way. And part of that for our particular journey at Poly is, again, this merger idea. We had 2 publishing platforms. We had 2 websites that we were publishing to. We were, duplicate of everything. So part of the sale was streamlining, condensing, saving money. I have a money cost saving story just on my local tools. So that was kind of the hook. So find your hook is another bit of advice. It's going to be different for every organization. Find your hook, and then again, start talking to other people. So now that I've done this will enable, if I put my whole team on SDL and I adopt draft spaces, then maybe I can do collaborative review. What does that look like? Who do I get to help me with that? And so you start, this evolution of influence skills, and then other people start talking. They literally do, where it builds a buzz.
Deb, I was going to ask you, what part of the pitch needs to not be about money? Obviously money is a critical part, but are there other things that we should be communicating? And if so, how do we tell those stories?
Yeah. Customer. And what ifs? What if the content my team produced was reused by the support organization and can be shared to our Salesforce tool set, and they don't have to rewrite a knowledge-based article? They can just take micro content out of my tech docs and share that through to their customers on the support line, and we save X number of hours and then searching the library to find the doc that they think they know exists. Right. You quantify these things.
That, that's a great thing. It ties into a question from an audience I thought I'd throw in just because it's really directly related to what you just said. Do you use dollar values in your proposals, or do you use other quantifiable benefits?
Oh, absolutely. I use dollars, and there's a time and a place for that, and you will work with your executive sponsor for those audiences. But this is I always say have one money slide and break it down over time. And in this case, this was just a format for our first year implementation. So, and that had to do in our case with getting everybody on the same publishing platform and getting through merger. And by the way, our merger story was a pretty good story, right? It's like, oh, we've been merged for a couple of years. Let's finally do this, right? So, how much am I spending today? How, when am I going to do things? And this is a budget slide. This you can share with finance too, which executives love. I need this much money in Q1, get this much money in Q3. This is where I'm going to spend on the top line. And that's what I'm going to get from my spend. But then down here, these are my savings. This is my return on my investment. This is, when I drop another vendor, this is what I'm going to, save in actual dollars. And, my publishing productivity is going to go up because I'm going to have one-click publishing. Great, fabulous. Instead of multiple cycles for every writer on every book all the time to multiple websites, you can actually quantify that in hours. How many hours does a writer spend publishing every month? Extrapolate that over a year, extrapolate that over your entire organization, and you can come up with some significant dollars having to do with like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in productivity increase, which anybody in tech pubs is going to say, oh, productivity, be careful about that whole reuse thing.
Yes.
But there are bits that work, and quantified engineering's time. Go talk to them. Hey, if you didn't have to look at a PDF and annotate it, if I could just get you directly into the system and you could do that, how much time do you think it'll save? And they
like
say,
that.
Yeah,
I
right.
like the idea, Deb. That what if idea, I think, is really a good way for people who are uncertain what exactly they should say. So I think that weaving together the story, like, what if I could partner with the partners, next door? We already do some other partnering with them, but we want to partner on this other new thing. I think those what if stories allow people to think about them without being overwhelmed by all the details.
Exactly. And what I'm presenting here, I'm lucky in that, I joined a very capable organization, and the managers and this team, we were already in a structured world. We already had Zoomin, we already had Acrolinks. I didn't have to go and actually sell those bit parts. But that could be part of your transformation journey, right? Maybe year one is just get Zoomin, right? And be able to start getting more awareness around your content and who's consuming it and what they think about it. Your journey can be built on very small things. What I'm sharing here is obviously, a higher level because I have all these bits and knobs and toolkits at my disposal. But people should always realize that no matter what you're trying to do, it's that what if thing, the thing that niggles your brain at night when your head goes on the pillow after a bad day. Turn that into a transformational journey. Start looking back from there.
That's great advice. Megan, I know you've got a question. Before we go there, I wanted to remind our audience members that you can ask a question of Deb before we run out of time just by clicking the Ask a Questions tab and typing in your question, and we'll queue them up and answer as many as we can.
Excellent. So I want to say, first of all, I love the money slide. I'm totally going to steal it because it's amazing. And one of the other things that I really like is that you distinguish between the money and the non-money, meaning the customer experience. So I want to talk kind of about the customer experience side. How much of the pitch is really around the perception that customers have, the trust that customers have, or the confidence they have in us?
It's a big portion, very big portion. So, and the customer experience, I mean, it could have to do with the content itself. How well authored is it? Where is it authored? How is it governed? Is the language itself an issue? It could be on the delivery, right? How am I delivering that information? Is it just in PDF? Do we need to change that? Do I need to get into some reactive XML kind of environment? Can I structure it differently so that I can parse it into HTML better? Are there other deliverables, even such as video or animations that my team needs to get into? How do I do that? What are those customer experience improvements that are going to come from those things? It could be literally anything. But break it down, not necessarily by tools, but by the customer need, and then paint that picture of how do you get there. We were approached recently by one of our business unit VPs that just suddenly up and decided that my team was going to do videos and animation, and I was like, okay. Right. And I'm pleased to say that with a lot of effort and some really amazing staff and others in our journey helping us figure it out, we figured it out. Not so much on the video side as much on the animation. It's proven to even give a morale boost and a alternate career path for some people in my organization. So, look at all of that, but ultimately it's the customer driving backwards what they need. How do you trickle down theory? It's trickle down economics, really. And then how much does it cost?
Yeah. So basically have like a customer experience slide, have the money slide, and the two together should tell a story, basically.
Yeah. And, I think technical publications people, historically anyway, we've been seen as a cost center. I said that earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Part of what this does is break that belief,
that reputation. Yeah.
That reputation for just being a cost center and it's a necessary evil and we just have to pay for it. You start turning it around and saying, well, actually, I touch the customer in a number of ways. And all of these things, I touch all these functional groups in a number of ways. Draw the picture, paint it for them. And yeah, everything costs something, but they're executives. They know everything costs something. They get that, right? So don't be afraid of the money, right? Don't be afraid to pitch it. Just make sure you got the story behind it.
Great.
That's some sound advice. And I think you kind of bled into my next question, which was asking you if you had any advice for budgeting. Do you have any other tip that you might be able to toss in here that would be useful to an audience member about your lessons that you've learned from budgeting?
Yeah, I would say that you're going to do it about 100,000 times minimum. Because it's going to evolve. And again, this is a journey. It's not an event. True transformational change is a journey. And you need to understand that what you're getting into is, the long haul of it. So starting out with, the vision, working backwards, all of that, once you kind of get it chunked out a little bit, and we're information developers, we can do this more easily than I think most of us believe we can. Once we get that roadmap and you start putting money to it, then you redo it, you pitch a piece of it, you pitch the whole thing, you get told, you got to listen to what your executives tell you, even when you don't want to. So, okay, I'm going to be limited. I'm only going to get $50,000 this quarter. So what can I do instead? Change the slides. Can I do that? Talk to finance. So it's an iterative process. It's not an event. So if you understand the journey and you're driving the journey, don't let somebody else drive your journey.
Yeah,
right?
Don't be dragged around by the journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Make adjustments and bring other people in, but don't let them, determine your fate. And if they go get money, go talk to them. How did you find out? Right? How did you get that money? Right? What did you do? Right?
That's great. And definitely don't put your barriers up because somebody else got money, right? And be like, oh my gosh, they're doing it. We got to hurry up. It's not butting heads. It's not a fight. It's not a battle. It's how can you work together? Question for you. When you're going out to get this money and you're trying to get all these stakeholders to support, how long should we expect that this transformation project takes? I mean, you said it's a journey, so obviously it's the long haul, but how long is it from the time you think it up to the time you actually sort of get started with phase one, let's say?
About a year in my experience. And I would say it was about a year at Cisco on some of our big transformation projects that we did at Cisco way back in the day. And you will have setbacks. The company, maybe you don't hit your earnings and suddenly the budget that you thought was approved isn't. And so you've got to be able to adjust. But I would say, plan, if it's really, truly transformational change, it's going to take you, a year or so just to touch all the people you need to touch, to build that buzz, to be able to get to that final, okay, stake in the ground. This is exactly what I want to do. And it's like remodeling a house, by the way. I tell people to live in their house before we start remodeling it. And because you don't really know all the things you need to know about that house when you first move in. You may think you want to do the bathroom first, and turns out the kitchen is not useful. So the same thing applies here. You may think you have on first pass the perfect plan, but time will change that. It'll erode and shift, and you will get to that plan. So just have faith in it and work it. Just don't give up. I would say that, I actually put a slide to this to share. So it is a journey. It's not an event, and patience pays off. You just have to keep going. Don't give up. Don't give in. Keep tying your story back to your customers. We've talked about that. Tying it to a broader initiative, like, customer, or whatever it is in your company that their banner messaging, tie it to that, and demonstrate the value. Who else wins? It can't just be about you. Obviously, the dollars. Do what you're asked. If they tell you to go back to the drawing board and include some group of content from some outlier organization that you never interact with, that has no purpose in this whatsoever, do it anyway. And then, finally, just be fearless, right? What's the worst that's going to happen? The content police are not going to come riding up on their white horses and take you out. You will be seen. In fact, you'll be seen as a risk taker and as someone with a vision. So even if you fail, even if you don't get there on year 1 or year 2, keep at it, right? You will make change.
I want to just add to your tie it to an initiative, a bigger initiative. Mm-hmm. Totally agree with that. Absolutely agree. That's one of the best ways to get things pushed through. And one of the big initiatives that I've seen in large corporations that you can tie to is anything around globalization. If you're talking about globalization, content is always a part of that. So if you have a globalization initiative in your organization, tie to that, because that's a biggie.
Yeah. And we're the language people. Right? I mean, the technical communicators, so are marketeers. There's lots of other content providers, but anybody in any role that's in the content game, we're the word people. We understand. Like, our marketing team just did this big thing about a new product, and they said it was a mind-blowing experience. Well, it turns out that mind-blowing in Russian actually can mean horrifying, as one of the translated.
Yeah.
So we were like, no, we're word experts. You probably shouldn't do that, right? Stop that. Do something else. Find another word that goes global, right? That's the localization, not just translation. And so that's a way you can show your expertise to other groups, to provide, some services to them, some influencing about what they're doing, all in the interest of helping for the benefit of the company. We're all sincere in that, and the benefit of the customers, right? So find those avenues and, pull the thread of that sweater. Just keep unraveling it till you get where you want.
Deb, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to see if you could stay and take a couple questions from the audience. I know, Megan, you could grab 1 or 2 of those, and I'll do the same.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Let's get the first one here.
Okay. So this is more of a comment, but let's get your thoughts on it. So somebody says, we're going back to that idea of go big or go home. And they're saying, I'm not being asked to go bold. I'm being asked to minimize the time anyone else in the corporation's management and leadership team needs to even think about this. And this, I assume, is content, which, I think that happens a lot. So what do you say to that?
That's that cost center thing. Where's your productivity? Well, I would say 2 things. One is show your value. Probably spend some more time influencing as best you can what value you are already delivering, and that's not, we published 13,000 documents and we blah, blah, got this product out. It's the value, and get other people to speak for you. Go to your engineering and marketing leaders, and those stories about where your organization made a difference for them and those above and beyond, go get that. Make them speak on your behalf. So it sounds like there's some value proposition that needs to be shared, and that content as an asset story. start selling that. Just start talking about it wherever you can, drop some lines, bring some other people in to share, build a story, build your own story, define that. And if you don't get the audience, I understand. I mean, I've been in that situation. Just keep trying. Eventually somebody will listen.
Deborah, you've been doing this, you've been at this work for a while now, so you've had a lot of experiences. Do you remember what it was like the first time when you had to go before leadership and ask for money? And do you have any tips on how to overcome that kind of reticence to do it? I know lots of people have said, hey, nobody asked me to reimagine how we publish.
Yeah, I have a quick story. So this is a Cisco story way back in the day in 2001 during the very first layoff at Cisco. And there was you may recall, a mini recession, and all of our publishing systems had just broken. Everything was breaking down, and it was, nobody could publish, marketing couldn't publish. The whole thing had just kind of screeched to a halt and needed a full reset. So myself and Paul Parada, who you may be familiar with, and Ben Jackson, a few of us that have been around forever, had to go before the executive leadership team at Cisco at that time. We called it the Valentine's Day Massacre because we were sure we were going to get killed. We were just sure we were going to get killed. And it happened on Valentine's Day. As it turns out, we ended up asking for millions of dollars in the middle of a recession, in the middle of the first ever layoff at Cisco, and they gave us the money. And the reason was that we showed the value of what we were trying to fix, right? We made a point of saying we're losing customers, right? When we quantified it. So not sure if that answered the question entirely, but cool. Quantifying the outcome really is a big part of this.
Yeah, and I think what I learned from that comment was you never quite know exactly what you're going to get. So be prepared and ask for the big ticket thing, because even if they only give you part of what you want, you're at least moving in the forward direction. And I think it's scary to ask for the big ticket thing, right? Because we think, there's so many things they could spend this money on. They probably won't spend it on us. But Deb, your success says otherwise.
Well, I think, technical documentation teams, because of the cost center thing and the longevity of our profession, I think there is this, overhead that we have to deal with. And I just sort of don't ascribe to that. And part of that's just my personality. Maybe I'm just a royal pain in the what, but I'm like, hi, I'm here, and this is stuff you need to know. And that's a be fearless thing. And again, what can they do to you? They can say no, but other people in your organization go and ask for huge dollars and make huge transformational change all the time. Why not us? Is how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's the way I think we should look at it. Why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of it does go back to that know your audience. If you work for a company that is just absolutely risk adverse, you may bump up against a wall, right? You might not want to ask for the million. You might want to ask for baby steps at a time because you're in a risk adverse situation. But unless you're in that situation, go back to go big or go home. I love that.
Well, even at that, my go bold, when I first pitched this, I had never met this general manager before. Or maybe I'd met her one time in one huge meeting with like 500 other people or something. But I mean, I didn't know her. So this request came to me. I didn't know my audience. And so I had to choose, am I going to scale back or am I going to go big or go home? I chose to go big or go home. And I did get, some love taps during that presentation where it was like, no, but that's okay, right?
Yeah.
We can take it.
Yeah.
Get that help to refine what you're doing.
One of our viewers said that they would advocate for TechDoc as a customer experience function to help kind of move the conversation along. Would you agree? And have you used that approach?
Absolutely, I agree. And I have used that approach. And also, content is an asset. This is part of that story, which is, why does marketing content matter than our content, more than our content? I mean, we produce, generally speaking, a depth of content, a technical complexity. We know the product's cold. We touch them, use them. We're not just selling it. We actually have to configure and troubleshoot and do all this other stuff with it and make it all work and deal with the ramifications if it doesn't. So why doesn't our content be considered an asset? It is.
Absolutely.
And it affects the customer, and it's used in pre-sales. And this is where the analytics from Zoomin come in, right? Because if you can get at that data, then you know that, particularly after a new product launch, and you see these, just meteoric rises of your quick start guide or your admin guide or whatever, we know anecdotally, but also in the numbers, that content's being used to help drive sales, and the sales team is using it. So go talk to those people, find out what they think, put those quotes in a slide, and get it in front of an executive.
Absolutely. I think one of the big benefits that a lot of our customers have seen is their portals have become mission critical. And if you can use that idea of mission critical, you might not put that in your slide that you want your content to be mission critical, but you want all content to be in a portal that becomes mission critical. And that idea of mission critical basically means it's a huge asset to your company, right? I love that. So there's another question, and that is, where did you find attack points, in quotes, with the executive level to get them to be aware of content as a strategic asset?
Good question.
Well, over the years, it's been a bit of a struggle. I mean, certainly not every job I've had or every role I've played have I had the benefit of executive leadership being interested at all. So I think that's influencing that next layer, the VPs or the directors, so the people that you actually do have access to. And then also, I think we're afraid to ask a lot of times. And also we're just overwhelmingly busy and it's hard to do, but put those people that you do have access to on the spot. I need your help with this. Will you do it? Yes or no? Right? Or will you set up a meeting with your boss so I can share this with them? Ask. If you expect that they're going to do it just because they feel like it, they're not going to. So again, that's sort of also building the buzz. Go off and influence your strategic partners, get them. And when you do something for them and it works, and your content saved us on this critical accounts call, great. Will you write that up and send it to not only my boss, but their boss? Ask to build that buzz.
Yeah. And the word buzz is interesting because I don't think it's often associated with technical communicators, but it should be, because it's like singing your own praises, right? If you have something to shine a light on, shine the light on it, maybe only for a minute. I know it's uncomfortable to maybe step into the spotlight when you're in the TechCom team, but it's the only way that people are going to know. I used to sit at my desk when I was a TechCom writer and be frustrated because I expected management should know.
Right.
They don't.
That we were wasting time. Why are they making us do it 15 steps when it should take one? I mean, they're smart people. They should totally know. So they must not care. So I started wallowing in the they must not care, feeling, instead of stepping up and saying, there's some stuff you should care about over here. And it might not be what I care about, but I know what you value. When we finally started talking to him in that way, it did change. We did not, as you pointed out, Deb, magically get everything that we wanted every single time. And sometimes we lost.
It's a journey.
You learn from it too, right? Like if you fail, maybe they'll tell you why. I remember somebody once told Paul Peralta and I actually were working on a project together where they said, you're not the right delivery person. The person who should deliver the message shouldn't be you. And that was a lesson we had to learn. Like, well, why shouldn't it be me? Why should it be Megan? We do have a little extra one other question. Can you stay for this?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So it says, we are a ServiceNow partner, and my executives believe that everything should reside in ServiceNow. Any suggestions on pitching a move of content to a more usable platform like Zoomin when executives believe everything should live in ServiceNow? I also know that ServiceNow doesn't even use ServiceNow for their own documentation. They use Zoomin.
They do. They're our customer partner. Absolutely.
Particular person.
Yeah. I mean, the power of the plugin is, for me, part of the strategy. And, Megan and I have talked about this in a number of fronts. And as we move into trying to share content out of our authoring systems with other platforms, including Salesforce, you get into those discussions. And this is really where getting advocacy from the other people. And sometimes those people are lower in the organization. And that's where you start out with just the poor guy on the phone dealing with trying to find content. Hey, what would you think if we could do that? You want to do a pilot? Let's see if we can make something work. Let's try that. Right. And a lot of times vendors will help you with that. to try and bridge gap, because they have an interest in selling you a plugin and getting in there as well, right? So go to your partners, go to your vendors, go to some of the lower level people, and put something together and try it, test it out. It's hard to make time for this. All of us have reduced staff, and it's tough. But pretty much everybody has somebody on the team that is like, oh, that's great. Let's go think about it.
Deborah, thank you for that. That was good. Megan, I wanted to see, because we have a little bit of time remaining, for the people who might have said, wow, that last question was a bunch of jargon to me because I don't know what ServiceNow is and I don't know why they're talking about bringing everything together in one place. Could you tell the audience a little bit about that so there was some context?
Yes, absolutely. So ServiceNow and Salesforce are CRMs that organizations will bring on to help them communicate, let's say, with their customer and to manage their business. And we have integrations within both Salesforce and ServiceNow, and both Salesforce and ServiceNow also happen to be customers. And so they know that documentation is not their forte. So they rely on integrations with companies like ours to be able to push that documentation out. And so we have things like when an agent is trying to type in a case because they're on the phone with the customer, they start typing the subject of the case, and we bring up a list of content that might answer that customer's question so they can easily choose it and just send it. So there's different ways to do that. So that person, whoever that is, should probably contact me and I can help them. I mean, this is easy. I would add to it that there may be an additional component to this where I've lived through this before, where they love ServiceNow and they love more than anything that it's their tool. And so if it becomes a my tool versus your tool, then there might be some psychology that needs to be done to get beyond that, so that you're actually talking about, well, we can integrate it with your tool, no problem, right?
Megan, one of the I'm sorry to interrupt you. One of the viewers just asked. She said she didn't. He or she said that they did not catch what I said about ServiceNow. They use who for their content? Can you tell people what you mean by bringing the content into ServiceNow from an external source, so they kind of understand where you're going?
So they use Zoomin for their content delivery. And so they have a portal that's built from Zoomin. And we also have an integration to take that same content that is delivered in Zoomin. You can deliver that same content within ServiceNow. So all of the knowledge articles that you have in ServiceNow go in the doc portal, and all of the doc portal content also goes inside ServiceNow. So no matter where your customer is coming or your agent is coming to the content, they're finding all of the information. Hopefully that answers.
Yeah, and I wanted to just add something, Megan, to what you said, which is this is when content becomes a service. This is when you hit that issue of, well, this is my silo and you're in your silo, you stay over there and we're not going to share our tools. It's like, no, content is an asset for the corporation. It is quantifiable. It is measurable. It is something that can traverse organizational boundaries, and it should. And that is providing your content as a service to the other organization or to your customer through that other organization or through that tool that is ServiceNow. Build that story, right? That is the gist of it.
I love that.
I do too. Thank you. And I think we gave some good context there. And Megan, to be fair, providing content as a service is not limited from the Zoomin portal to ServiceNow. There are also kind of little leadways into other tools like Salesforce, and probably in the future other tools. So these are what, APIs that connect?
Yeah, it's all API driven. Absolutely. Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, listen, thank you, Deborah, for sharing everything you did today. You were a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate you making time to be on our show. I know Megan does too.
This was fun.
It was. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to invite the audience to join us on August the 31st, 2 weeks from now, for a chat with Denise Cadillac. She's the Senior Manager of Information Architecture at Blackbaud Software. And we're going to talk to her about how her team has taken over the responsibility for creating UX content. You've heard a lot about UX writing and people are rebranding themselves. In this particular webinar, you'll discover what happened when the team at Blackbaud Software took over UX writing tasks, what they learned, and what new skills and tools they had to add in order to ensure their success. And then a couple of weeks later, we're going to meet with Kathy Clemens, who's going to talk to you about some of the lessons that she's learned building content teams at the various companies that she's worked at. There's some great knowledge sharing there at that show, so you're not going to want to miss that either. All right, Megan, thank you. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate you being here too.
Yeah.
And guess what? No technology snafus.
Before everyone signs off, I want to make sure that they give us a rating. So
yes,
for all of you viewers, make sure you find the Rate This tab, which is located in your webinar viewing panel, and give us a 1 to 5 star rating, but also leave comments. We read every single one of them. We want to make sure that these shows are giving you value. And so that's the only way that we really learn from you. So definitely add the 5 star rating and the comment. We'll read them all.
Excellent. Yeah, go bold, everybody.
Go bold.
Go bold.
Yes. Just be concise.
Theme of the week.
Be concise about your boldness. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks to the audience. You've been watching The Content Advantage with Scott Abel and Megan Gilhooly. Today's show has been recorded. Shortly after you sign off, you'll get an email with a link that will allow you to watch today's live program as a recording. You can even share that link with other people on demand, and we hope that you will do that. And we hope that you'll join us for an upcoming episode. Until then, look, be safe, be well, and keep doing great work. We look forward to seeing you at another webinar in the future. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Megan.
Thanks, Deb.
Ensure your customers find the answers they need with Zoomin. Bring together product content from all teams and sources to deliver a unified, personalized content experience. Check us out at www.zoominsoftware.com.
Goodbye, Deb. Bye, Megan.
Bye.